you as a dealer out there watching, listening to this, you're going to see those two lines right there with ICE and the hybrid and PHEV and BEVs, start to get closer and closer and closer and closer and closer. Right now, we already start to see those lines start to reach out to themselves.
This is new retail registration, so no fleet. And then you can start to see that continued decline of ICE. So that's gasoline, flex fuel, and then that electric kind of stays flat from, again, full year 2024. You can see there was growth, and then it kind of went flat for a quarter.
Welcome to the Experian Auto Insights podcast, where we explore the data driving today's automotive industry. Join us as we unpack key insights from Experian's quarterly automotive trends reports to help you stay ahead in a fast-moving market. Here's your host, Jason Harris.
Hey, what's going on, Podcast Nation? My name is Jason Harris, and thank you for joining me on another episode of the Experian Auto Insight podcast. Well, we get to talk anything and everything we want to talk about when it comes to just cool insights, data, trends. And I got a special guest with me today, actually. I'm super excited to speak to this guest. We've hung out a couple times before, and I always bring some really interesting insights to our industry. I have the one, the only, the oh-so-famous John. Paid me to say that. No, I'm just kidding. I have John Howard with me, Director, Product Management at Experian. John, what's going on, man? How you doing?
Hey, guys. Good. How are you, Jason?
I'm doing well, man. I'm doing well. It's sunny. It's 105 degrees here, but hey, it's summer and it's beautiful, and I'm ready to talk insights, man.
It's better than a foot of snow. So
yeah, no kidding, right? I'll take that over snow any time of the day. Man, I'm excited about this. We got a lot of stuff. We're going to go into some just kind of state of the automotive market. We're going to talk some EVs and hybrids. Yes, people, I said it. You heard me. Don't get bashful. Don't you think about turning this off. We are going to talk about it, and you're going to love it. But there are some market trends out there, John, that we got to jam about. Before we get into those, John, I love kicking off these podcasts with a little origin story, because I'm just kind of fundamentally fascinated myself. John, how in the world did you get started in this crazy little world we call the automotive industry?
Believe it or not, I was on the dealer side for 17 years. I worked for, it was ADP Dealer Services then, now CDK Global. I started in the client services side at ADP in 1995, working with dealers, troubleshooting software, and then eventually moved into product management at ADP. And another 7 years later, left the business for about a year, and then got drugged back into automotive.
It does that, right? It'll do that to you, won't it?
That's exactly
right back in.
It's hard to get away. And believe me, I missed it. I was, like I said, I left the industry for about a year, and that's still, it was all so embedded in my brain. So yeah, that's how I wound up at Experian. Entered as product management, and now I am currently still in the product management arena, but I do a lot of data consulting, solution consulting, subject matter expertise. I dig into every piece of data that we have. So that's kind of how I live and breathe it.
And tell me a little bit about this report, because I think for everybody out there watching and listening, if you don't know about the Experian Automotive kind of insight reports, there are a handful of them that come out. Crazy enough, they're actually free. I know Austin's going to throw the QR code up right now as I'm talking, so you guys can actually scan it and go and get a copy of it. But John, just tell me a little bit, because it's kind of like, how did you guys start? How long have you been doing the reports, and just is some of the value you think dealers can get from downloading this and consuming it?
Sure. So we do three pieces of thought leadership. Again, I'm one of three. I look at the overall automotive market. Melinda Zabritsky also looks at the automotive market from a credit lens or a finance lens. And then Kirsten Von Busch also does another very similar presentation where she's focused on the consumer. So we've been doing these, or at least this is probably one of our oldest pieces of thought leadership, quarterly. Again, each one of these is done quarterly. Again, this one has such a focus on vehicles in operation for a specific quarter. Registrations, you mentioned EV, that's kind of a special section that's sort of built into this, focused on what's going on in the electrification market. And then this also integrates a little bit of loyalty to kind of see where customers are coming from, especially in that EV space. What are they doing when they come back to market? What are they replacing that EV with? The majority of those being Tesla, but we'll get to that. We'll get to that though.
And I love the fact that you guys do this. And look, I understand because I've read through a lot of these over the years. Um, this takes time. I mean, I gotta be honest,
Takes a
it's
lot of time.
impressive that you guys have taken the time to really kind of put these together. You, like you said, you cover everything: market trends, consumer trends, finance trends. There is a lot of data there, and maybe it's my inner Boy Scout coming out in me and stuff like that. But like these are things I look forward to consuming, to be prepared, for operation. So people, if you're out there watching and listening right now and you haven't registered, you need to go register right now because it will. And we're going to go over a little bit of the trends today. Like I said, there's market trends, there's consumer trends, there's finance trends. There's so much insights to consume, but it'll inspire your inner Boy Scout or Girl Scout, and you'll want to be prepared. It will prepare your operations for some cool things. So let's kick it off, John. Let's get into market trends.
Cool. Yeah. Like I said, this is just kind of an excerpt of the larger deck, but I really wanted to focus on just some call outs that, again, I presented this a number of times already. There's some very specific call outs that I think should get some minds rolling, like, well, what's going to happen next quarter? And that's kind of what this does. This does a good idea of trending. So we do a lot of comparisons to the prior quarter a year ago. So again, this is Q1 2025. This first slide just kind of does a good setup of the vehicles that we track. So this one, 343.5 million vehicles in operation is all vehicle classes, including power sports, medium and heavy duty, buses, semis. So 343.5 in both US and Canada. We do compile both. So that's kind of one thing to call out here. The majority of this is going to focus on the US as I kind of move forward, but this just kind of sets the stage for what we see in operation between US and Canada, again, in all vehicle class.
343 million, man. That's a good number too. I mean, I know that's gone up,
It
over
has.
the years. So it is cool to see that number rise again, because I feel
Yep.
like it was just recently we were talking about it dropping. So that's cool.
So when we focus on the US, this one kind of just goes into the changes. So started back in Q1 2024 with 289.6, 16 plus million new vehicles registered.
Big.
Another 12 went out of operation in that year, and then 39.3 used vehicles change ownership. So again, those aren't necessarily dealer transactions, but those are vehicles changing hands. And then this also incorporates just a little bit of the same vehicles being in a household and those household moves. So upwards of 28, almost 30, 29%, total VIO changes over the year. So it's 12 months, leaving us in the US with 293.5 of that 343 million that we just talked about in the US in operation on the road. And when I say that, we look at vehicles in operation as vehicles that are currently legally registered to be on the road in their state.
And that's a growth, guys. If you're out there watching, listening right now, and you are not seeing some of this growth, then you really need to start thinking about, some of the operational strategies. Look, what I see right here is just an opportunity both in sales and in fixed ops. All right, especially when I see that many used vehicles getting changed. Man, just huge fixed ops opportunities here. But I'm sure you guys, you're seeing some of the growth. But if not, maybe some time to start having some conversations. Sorry, go ahead and continue, John.
Yeah, no, and I will just kind of give a focus again. This slide just kind of covers light duty only. In that last slide, we were kind of saying here's everything. So this is just light duty passenger car and truck. Just kind of give it. The next slide, going into what you just said, Jason. This next slide kind of covers what's currently in operation by model year. So of all the vehicles in operation, 82.3% of the U.S. population of VIO is in 20 model year span age-wise, and then the current 25 is 92.3. So I think key takeaway here is, I mean, the question is how many of those vehicles are really heavy daily drivers versus vehicles that just kind of sit in a garage or sit on the side of the garage, but are still currently registered or legally registered, if you will. Same goes to the next step, that 25 model year span. 92% of everything that's in operation right now sits there. So again, the question is how many of those from a fixed op standpoint are candidates? Right?
Exactly. And there's a lot out there. And guys, look, for everybody out there watching and listening, you think you have competition in sales. Your competition is in your fixed ops department. Okay. I understand if you're a Nissan dealer, you might be thinking the Nissan dealer across the city is your competitor. Now let's talk about the 13 to 16 non-franchise entities that are in your market that are fighting for that same oil job.
Yeah.
Right. So, I mean, look, here's a cool thing. This data is showing that there's opportunity there. All right. And you guys need to be having a strong fixed ops, conversation here for sure.
The next one kind of sticks with that sort of fixed ops and after sales kind of market. So we've defined what we call the sweet spot, and that's pretty much vehicles that have fallen out of the manufacturer warranty.
Yeah.
So usually 6 to 12 model year old vehicles. That post sweet spot goes into the 13 model years and older. And then that pre-sweet spot is when they're likely to still be covered by the vehicle's OEM warranty. So again, this sweet spot is this next slide's focus. And again, US only, but of everything in operation, this kind of gives a gauge of, you can see how many model years that those red bars fall into that sweet spot. So that would be 2014 to 2020 model years fall into that likely out of manufacturer warranty. So this is up just a little bit from 2023 and then quite a bit from 2021. And you can see on the left, I kind of gauge, we've gone from 94.2, this is all Q1 numbers, 94.2 up to 105.4, again, in that sweet spot of all vehicles in operation. So again, this is a focus point for aftermarket, after sales warranty. And then again, kind of pushing that sweet spot, especially when you look at that post sweet spot just as well from a fixed ops standpoint.
I think anybody out there that's in charge of their marketing or in charge of some operation strategies, I know a lot of times we like to start thinking about model strategies and stuff like that, but there's something that he said here in that sweet spot. And actually, if you wouldn't mind, John, maybe just go back to the one slide real quick, because
Sure.
I really don't want to harp on that 6 to 12 model year vehicles. You guys, for everybody out there watching, all right, and if you don't, you should, all right, that over 60% of your database for your franchise dealer leaves you once the warranty is expired. And 60 might be on the low side, depends on your manufacturer. I've seen anywhere between 60 and 80%, all right, being there. That is the sweet spot. It's not only the sweet spot for just trade-ins, because honestly, that is the vehicles that we want, all right, but it is the sweet spot for service. And I think anybody out there that's watching, by the way, if you're watching this and you're fixed up, you need to be posting a comment down below, right? Because I want to hear from you, because that is a magical place for our businesses to bring those cars in, not only because it creates loyalty, but builds trust, so that when they ultimately do sell it, you're going to be the one that is selling it, but it's also going to be the most profitable vehicle that you can service. And if the customer decides to keep it even longer and it goes post sweet spot, I'm telling you, I love me a 10-year-old plus year car in my service department. Is my favorite kind of car to work on. Anyways, I digress. let's go ahead. We'll continue, because there's a lot here, guys. And I think as we're going through this show, guys, if you should be taking some notes. I know the QR code every once in a while is going to pop up here, so you guys can make sure you guys register and get your own copy of this, because like John said earlier in the conversation, we're just going through a handful of these. There is a lot in this report, but we wanted to pull a few of the key points and kind of talk about that in today's conversation. Go ahead, John, continue.
That's great, Jason. Thanks. So next slide kind of digs into, let's dig into that vehicles in operation. Now we start to look by segment. So not a whole lot of changes on the, between the segment shares. Again, one kind of does a top 20 vehicle segments with class included in it. So you'll see some kind of luxury call outs. And then on the right, kind of drop the class. Full size pickups are kind of always at the top, mid-size CUVs. So nothing huge changes here. The one thing I want to call out here, though, is how this electrification, we're going to dig into this in a little bit, but how everybody thinks that, the EV or BEV market is dying. And you can see from an in-operation standpoint, it's not. So 4.8 million currently in operation. Again, the pink is the full BEV. And then combined hybrid and plug-in hybrids at a 10.6. So nothing to really to call out specifically here, because we're going to dig into this in a little bit. But just this is kind of a good setup for that the market's not dead.
And I love to still see pickups are up there, right? I mean,
yes, yeah.
We love our pickups. Who doesn't? I just got a brand new pickup, so it was surprised to me that I see a pickup. And again, here's the funny thing I think about pickups, right? Because I think about when my dad drove a pickup, right, and when now I drive a pickup. Look, I bought a pickup as a family vehicle.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yes, I can tow with it. Yes, I can do some other things, but that's not the primary purpose. I bought it because it just fits my family. It fits all of the soccer gear and all the hockey gear and all that stuff in anymore. And it's just like, I just something to think about, folks. When you're marketing, is that pickups doesn't surprise me that it's number one, but that whole consumer that is purchasing that vehicle has fundamentally changed. And if you're not marketing to multiple different categories of those consumers, not like my dad, he just bought it so he can move his trailer and pull his utility stuff around the house, right? So it's changed a lot. Sorry, go ahead.
No, and I was just going to make a call out. So again, kind of look at that hybrid space. I mean, it's up from 2020. It's up 51%. I mean, EV is even higher than that, but it's this is going to be interesting when we get to the slide that kind of focuses, or the section that focuses on electrification in general. There's some interesting note taking there.
Well, and it's interesting to see how we see more of that technology going into the truck space.
Yes.
Right?
Yes, absolutely.
The Toyota Tundra, you can only get it now in a hybrid.
Yep.
I think they got rid of this V6. Yeah, I think it's all hybrid now.
You're right.
It's all that. And now we're seeing the other manufacturers that are also building, more hybrid or fully electric. Anyways, I know we're going to go into that, so I'll hold off.
Because I do have, there's a call out on another slide. Again, going back to Toyota's new strategy or their focus on hybrid. It's interesting what it's doing to the numbers.
Yeah.
So one call out here is just the fact that we did see a major spike in March, and again we can really tie that back to just the threat or the consumer reaction to tariffs.
Of course.
And the idea, I mean, I can't tell you in my market, I'm in Chicago, how many dealerships just focused on targeting that consumer that might or might not be in a buying position, pulling that decision forward just to get a vehicle that's on the lot today. So that was interesting to see. March and April was very similar, but here you'll kind of notice that it's very similar to post-COVID. So go back to between 21 and 22, kind of where you see that same jump in sales or registrations. So again, very interesting to kind of monitor this as time goes on. But again, April was very similar, not as high of a spike, but you could tell tariffs had something to do with that, without a doubt.
Well, everybody was talking about it. You couldn't throw on the news or any news outlet out there that wasn't bringing up some conversation in it, and it made sense. I mean, I think for dealers out there, you saw some opportunity to have some, I would just say, deeper conversations with your customers, and we can see it in the data that you guys successfully did a good job of having those conversations and getting those buyers that were maybe on the fence or just kind of in the slightly or totally in the end market to make a decision at that point in time before any major political decisions were made. So no, I bravo to the industry. I think they did a good job of handling that.
I think so too. I mean, it was definitely something that dealers took advantage of, and it worked. Right. So next slide just does a quick take on makes or brands by their share. The one call out I will make here, Toyota is typically, always somewhere at the top, if not the top, between Toyota and Ford. But this one's interesting about Tesla. So the way to read this, it's kind of what's called a bump chart. So if you look at Tesla, it's kind of that pink color, and I'll kind of see if you can see my mouse. Kind of where Tesla began was where they kind of rose out of the depth into slot 12. Well, then they bumped, right? So now we're talking the Model 3, Model Y, both came out. So now they jumped to position 9 in rank. Again, this is across all brands, all classes. So then they go to 10. So if you can see my mouse, so then they go to 10 in Q1 of 2024. Now dropping again to position 11 in Q1 of 2025. So their industry share rank is continuing to decline, again, with more EVs in market and more launches to come. It'll be interesting to kind of keep tabs on what happens with Tesla as far as their growth or decline in share against all the other brands.
Yeah, it seems like some of the biggest jump around was kind of with Tesla. No surprise to see the RAM just kind of continues to fall off.
Well, the pie is getting bigger. right?
pie's
So,
getting bigger. The pie is getting bigger, and manufacturers are having to innovate. And what you see coming out in the news and what the manufacturers are reporting, I think it's going to be an exciting rest. I know for a lot of you guys out there watching and listening, there are some new models that are arriving this year, and you guys, as a 2026 model, will be here on 2025. This is a fun time because we kind of see where models start to kind of get towards the end of their time, and then the refresh versions are coming in. And there's a fair amount of the manufacturers on this list that have something new coming this year. So it's going to be cool to see how the end of this year finishes off for everyone.
yeah, for sure. And the next slide actually goes into the model. So I'm going to kind of call out Tesla again here. And it's really just because you notice Model Y's kind of lost a little bit of share since the prior Q1 over on 2024 on the right. But interesting, Model 3 kind of jumps a little bit, which is down towards the bottom. Again, kind of look for that pink line. But that's interesting because this is about good timing. They've just done a facelift on the Model 3. It actually looks pretty good. But I think that's getting a lot of impact from a sales perspective, that kind of refresh Model 3. I've seen quite a few of them on the road.
And
then,
if you're a Subaru dealer, I'm just going to give you hands down, just a round of applause for being a Subaru dealer, because there's just something to be said about the sheer consistency that is a Subaru dealer. And I've worked with a handful of Subaru dealers. Consistency in their production, consistency in their marketing, consistency in profitability. I mean, man, what I wouldn't do right now to be a Subaru dealer. Anyways,
some of my favorite car commercials are Subaru. I gotta
right?
say.
They do it well. It's a good job.
On this one, again, back to vehicles in operation, this kind of does a model year strategy. So a couple of call outs here is I've worked with a lot of OEMs, and I know there's a lot of reinvestment going now back into hybrids and plug-in hybrids, and you can kind of start to see that in what's on the road. So if you kind of look, just the two call outs that I do there is the fall in ICE or any other combustible type engine. And then if you kind of look at 2024 and 2025 model years, you can start to see that, that rise in hybrid. So that's the standard hybrid.
Mhm.
Plug-in hybrid, a little bit, kind of, I'd say flat. But it's interesting to watch that line grow on the standard hybrid side. And kind of one thing you just made note of it, and it'll come up on the next slide, is Toyota's decision to, in a few of their model lines, drop the ICE engines and make hybrid a standard. Camry is another example.
Yep.
You'll see when I get to some model shares that the Camry is, it looks odd, but that was because model year 2025 they went hybrid only. So it looks odd to see compared to last year, what it looks like this year from a share perspective.
Well, it's funny because Toyota was getting so much grief about I guess being slow to move into electrification or full 100% electrification, right?
Full battery,
And
right?
here's the thing I just love about Toyota. They do take their time, all right? And just like everybody out there watching and listening right now, they consume the trends. They look
Mhm.
at the insights, all right? And yeah, they are a little more calculated. And this is why, not only the manufacturers, but you as a dealer out there watching, listening to this, you need to be consuming. You're going to see that line start to get those two lines right there with ICE and the hybrid and PHEV and BEVs, start to get closer and closer and closer and closer and closer. Right now, we already start to see in those lines start to reach out to themselves. But to your point, John, there is more depth. Insights on this particular area. Again, scan the QR code that's popping up here every once in a while to make sure you guys get a copy of yours today, because this isn't going away. All right. I know I've been in conversations where people are like, well, it's a fab. Look, Toyota doesn't do fabs, right? They really do trends. And I know we're going to get into that here in the next slide.
Yeah, and they were highly scrutinized, right? When everybody started going, full battery electric, they were highly scrutinized because they weren't moving at the pace of other manufacturers. But now you can kind of see why, and you said it, Jason, calculated, right?
Yeah.
This was all a play to let's not jump, and let's move at a little bit slower pace, and it's working for them.
They want to see where the consumer landed on it,
Exactly.
right? And I
Yep,
think,
exactly.
consumers understanding of the technology and now just confidence in the technology is in a place to really double down on that, and that's what we've seen recently, and that's what we're going to see from them moving forward. What we're seeing other manufacturers also follow suit, though. That's what I'm saying. It's an exciting time to be in the industry from a technology perspective.
So now we're going to kind of flip into registration. So again, we were looking at vehicles in operation, again, what's legally registered to be on the road. Now I'm going to start to look into trends by fuel type. So here, just so you know, some of my counterparts also do some things around, fuel type shares and of registrations and whatnot. I just wanted to say this one actually does include U.S. territories like Guam, U.S. Virgin Islands. So the numbers may not align with maybe something that was presented by one of my counterparts. But again, that's just because I kind of throw in all the U.S. territories in here as well. So the interesting here is just kind of look at that hybrid line. Again, I've kind of put hybrid, standard hybrid and plugins together, but you can see the growth, right? Even just from full year 2024
Yeah.
to the first quarter 2025. Again, this is new retail registration, so no fleet. And then you can start to see that decline or the continued decline of ICE. So that's gasoline, flex fuel, and then that electric kind of stays flat. So from, again, full year 2024, you can see there was growth, and then it kind of went flat for a quarter. It'll be interesting to keep following up, for the next quarter, following quarter, just to see how that number in electric changes versus the hybrids.
And, like, look, I think there are a fair amount of ICE owners out there that are making the switch. I mean, well, the data shows. I don't think it. I know it. The data is actually there, right? They are making the switch. I mean, heck, I know multiple neighbors just recently, just make the switch themselves, and it may not necessarily be their primary vehicle. It could be their secondary vehicle that's at home. But there's definitely the consumer confidence or just trust in the technology is there, and we're seeing more and more of it. And I think for anybody out there watching and listening, you know, um, it's there. You guys just need to seek it out for sure.
So this one kind of goes into that full BEV. I'm kind of constantly watching what battery electrics on the market, sort of where they fall, where they're gaining share. You can kind of see the Model Y has, again, like we already talked, has declined a bit. But then again, that Model 3 has gained share. And again, that was, I'm going to probably qualify that to its new facelift. And actually, like I said, it looks pretty good. Um, so that's kind of the only, you on the right, you'll see a lot of missing pieces of the graph, and that's just because everything's too new to compare to a prior, to something a year ago. But yeah, big call out here again for Tesla, just what's going on in their space. And I think the Model Y is also due for a refresh coming soon, so that may change. But from an overall brand perspective, the dominance is kind of declining a bit.
Well, and you look at
And
most of
it's
these,
much
and
bigger.
we're seeing most of them have an increase, as well, right? We're not, and again, I think this does come down to the dealers that are out there watching and listening. Um, it's a different strategy. All right. You
Hmm.
need to have a different approach, not only to the marketing of these vehicles, but and we haven't talked about necessarily just when we will talk about this in the future episode. There's a huge opportunity here in the leasing. All right, because I think I can't remember what the stat was, but it was, of course, a majority, a very large majority of these vehicles are being leased.
Agreed.
And,
Yeah.
as dealers, this is what we need. So we need to embrace this technology and prepare both our marketing and our sales team. And if you need to have a dedicated salesperson, that understands this technology better, you do so. Look, I remember when I first started, in 1999. All right, there was a truck specialist. And it's like if you wanted to, order a truck and you need to have a certain gear ratio with a certain axle ratio and needed to be able to do this, and because there was 192 ways you could configure a truck at that point, right? Like you had to have a specialist for it, and you brought the specialist in to help do that. And look, I don't think it's any different here than when we started selling hybrids in the early 2000s as well. It just there's a bit more of an education, a little bit more of a sales process here, but the consumers are there, and I think that's what if you're out to watch them, that's what you need to take away. The consumers are there. You just need to be where the consumers at. Sorry, go ahead, John.
Next slide just kind of goes into that state electrification space. So here's kind of where I make a call out of the Camry. It looks odd when you kind of look at 2.4% hybrid and now 11.5 a year later. And that, again, be from that decision in the model year 2025, that the powertrain is strictly hybrid. And like I said before, they've done that with a few models. So interesting strategy. It'll be interesting to watch where this goes and how many of those Toyota loyalists, that maybe are in an ICE engine with a Camry, how many of those will come back and fall into the hybrid space. But I mean, from a gas mileage perspective, you can't beat it. And the price is still kind of in line, or at least very close to an ICE powertrain. So it'll be interesting to watch that over time and how many more models they wind up going full hybrid on.
It's interesting. It's an interesting point that you bring up, because as the pricing gap becomes closer and closer and closer to each other, we're going to see more of an adoption there, right? Look, when I first started in the business, it was similar to that with diesel. Right now, because of Dieselgate, there's not nearly as many diesel vehicles out there anymore.
You said it, I did not.
I said it. All right. But there was a time. There was a time where there was a gap between these two, and it got closer and closer and closer, and we saw an exponential increase in that. And I'm going to say similar trends here, guys. As these prices become similar, closer, the gap becomes closer and closer and closer. The consumer is going to make a decision, and more educated decision. I think just as dealers, that's our responsibility, is to educate them. And by the way, if you're a dealer out there, you do need to go get this copy of this report, and you need to know these vehicles. These are the vehicles you need to know, right? So if you are competing and you would say one of these vehicles is a competitor of yours, you need to intimately know that, because this is what people are talking about right now.
So next one, this is a fun one. So it might look like an eyesore, but this is one to really drill into. So a year or so ago, there was a study that came out. Everybody was just kind of in an uproar about all of these electric owners, or these EV owners that were surveyed. 50 some percent were going to, said they're going to go back to gas. And
I remember that.
Yep. I know who it was. I'm not going to say, but it got a lot of attention, and that's what kind of made me start digging into this, to continue looking at what vehicles are being replaced and what they're replacing with. So this one, from a loyalty standpoint, looks at vehicle replacement. So what left an owner's garage about the time of acquisition. There's very specific rules around that for our logic, but so this is over a 12-month period, and I monitor this now every quarter to look and see what's happening in the electric market. Now, those electric on the right, so that's the right kind of dark pink or magenta. These are electric owners returning to market. 76%, just over 76, are staying loyal to full BEV. Mm-hmm. Now, that's a little bit down from last quarter. So I don't know if I'm not going to make anything of that yet. It's not that much. It's just about a percentage point down. But it'll be interesting to see, again, as these hybrid strategies continue to bump. Now, the majority, the call out here is the majority of those are still Tesla owners. There's not a whole lot of other newer EVs in market yet. Some, but again, majority of those are probably Tesla. And Tesla owners tend to be very loyal.
They have some of the highest. I mean, they're right up there with Subaru owners.
Absolutely. Yes. They're at current somewhere high 70s, high 80% owner loyalty to the brand. So again, kind of looking at that gasoline line, only less than 16% of those owners have replaced their full BEV back with an ICE vehicle. Again, I'm not sure what to make of that yet until we kind of get, again, majority of those are Teslas. So it'll be interesting to watch this over time, especially as more of the newer regime of models come back in market and look for replacement. As you mentioned it earlier, typically these are leases. So yes. I'd say, within 24, 36 months, the owner has to do something. So it's interesting to watch.
We're going to see some changes. There's just going to be lifestyle changes. Yep. What I found interesting was kind of the age demographic on a lot of these earlier model EVs and the Model 3s. They've actually now begun to age up, but when they first came in, so when you got to think about that lease cycle, when they came in, they were younger. Now they're on to, possibly, that could have been quite possibly their first vehicle or their second. Now they're on to their third. We know that as you typically progress in your vehicles, you progress into larger vehicles because things happen in your life and family that require something bigger. We don't have a full electric minivan out there. It's like, no, we don't. I had to think about that for a second. So it doesn't surprise me that there's always going to be some people that are going to fall off. But the number that surprises me is just how many of the gas are going over to EV. Is the 17% of gas owners have replaced their vehicles with something that's electrified
over the last 12 months, right?
Over the last 12 months.
That's a fairly recent number.
That's a fairly recent number, and I think that's definitely one that I'd be paying attention to. And to your point, John, as we're seeing more hybrid technology, that's the number that I bet you when we come back here in the next quarter, we can look back on that. I think that number is going to continue to rise. What's your bet?
I would agree. And I think and go to the kind of on that hybrid side over on the left, at least in the plug-in space, noticing how many of those plug-in owners came back to market and went electric, and 23% is a pretty high number. So some form of hybrid is kind of, I believe, a stepping stone to full electric, but especially from those plug-in hybrids, because you're already kind of used to the technology, you're used to the process. It's not such a jump to go to a full BEV, from a plug-in hybrid.
No, it's kind of a casual jump. And I think from a consumer out there, I can actually speak from this because I've actually kind of done something like this myself. I was in a hybrid and moved to a full electric. Look, you're seeing that you're spending most of your time in an electric mode. So once you kind of see that data on a regular basis, it's usually one of the big reports that show up right there on the dashboard that you're continuing most of your driving, 80+% of your driving is in an electric mode. You might as well make the jump and have full cost savings of having to fill up at the tank anymore. So it doesn't surprise me at all. But I think for dealers out there watching and listening, again, you got to educate your team on this, right? Because this is happening, right? That means the consumers having this conversation at home and with their significant others. And is your sales team kind of trained and ready to kind of handle and also just kind of support this conversation? Because I think we're at the point now where it's like, can I go this way or can I go that way? And it's our role.
It's becoming a little bit more mainstream, right?
Yes.
So there's not, I mean, the range anxiety is still out there, but it's not as impactful as it was. And especially when you kind of go back on that hybrid side, I feel like there's still a lot of focus from manufacturers on the hybrid market, almost more than full BEV. Especially with some of the tax credits coming up that are going to go away.
Yep.
That kind of, it's going to be interesting to see what happens after September with the full BEV market. And again, that's going to be up to the manufacturers, the captives, how they're going to incent customers to kind of stick, in that full battery electric market, and not just manufacturers, dealers as well. Right?
Yes. But I also think for dealers out there, just looking at this data on this particular one, again, there's a lot of additional insights in this report. I know the QR code is popping up. So if you haven't scanned it, you need to scan it and make sure that you register for this. All right. But I'm just thinking, this is just me putting my dealer hat back on. Guys, these are the customers I want. I mean, the loyalty, all right, in coming back and getting another electric vehicle. It's a piece of technology that once people get used to having it in their life, they just don't really go backwards too much. And that number, I think, is only going to continue to grow, to your point, John, with the hybrid technology continuing to expand throughout the industry.
And you mentioned one thing, and I don't think I put it in this sort of summarized deck, but there is a slide. It's probably just after this one in my in the larger compilation that does talk about what millennials are doing, what Gen Xers are doing, what fuel types they're staying in. So that's an interesting one too. And there's also some trends, but again, kind of focusing in on generations and things like that. So it's a one-slider, but it's pretty cohesive.
That's
like
what
I said,
and John, then John, thanks for bringing that up, because that's a really good point. There's something in this report in all of these reports that you guys put together for everybody. I see there's something in there for, me as the owner. I see something in there for my management team of maybe what they need to communicate, or coach or train with, with their sales team to be able to handle some of these conversations. Those are conversations. I know we're talking them as percentage, but those are household conversations when people are flipping and having those switches like that. And then there's stuff in here for your marketing team, to consume. So if you guys are downloading this report, I encourage you to get the rest of your team to also download the report, or at least share it, forward it off to them, so they can take a look at it, because there truly is in every single one of these reports, there is something for everybody at all levels in your operations, for sure. Sorry, John, go ahead, continue.
No, please. And just one last, there's kind of a summary of the entire deck. If you want, if you've only got time, you got 5 minutes. And this is again
the
right
cheat
at the end of
sheet.
the deck.
John, we weren't supposed to tell them about the cheat sheet. No, I'm just kidding. This is the Cliff Notes. This is like when me in high school and I had to go buy that yellow book because I didn't want to read the whole Odyssey. Yes, okay.
You're right. This is the Cliff Notes. And then just a reminder. So next up for Q2 2025, that'll be out in September. So coming up pretty soon. Again, all three reports from finance trends, market trends, and consumer trends, all will be up around the same time in September.
Guys, for everybody out there watching and listening, we really, really appreciate you taking the time to join me and John in this conversation. As we only touched on a handful of slides in this deck, we definitely encourage you to go and download it. Like I said earlier, there is something in here for every part of your operations. And I would encourage you to grab this as an owner, consume it, maybe grab like kind of what we did in today's conversations, grab 3, 4, 5, 6 slides, bring it to your manager meeting and just have a what if conversation. What if this trend continues to go that direction? How do we prepare ourselves for it, right? These were actually some of my favorite meetings I had as an owner of a dealership, was what I called a what if meeting. And now sometimes those got derailed and they really went what if. But anyways, this will give you some direction. This report will give you some direction in some of those conversations and maybe some of the strategies from a sales perspective, from an operations perspective, from a fixed ops perspective, and of course, marketing as well. Just some real great conversations, and the insights in these reports will give you guys some direction to have those conversations. John, I really appreciate you taking the time to come hang out with me. This is going to be fun. I really look forward to next quarter because I think there's some stuff in here that could possibly stay the same. And then I don't know, it depends kind of what happens here in the next month or so. There's some things that can make you switch. Yeah, especially with your report, right? When I'm thinking of like some of the finance report and the consumers report. But John, man, depending on what happens over here pretty soon, there could be some pretty big changes for you.
Yeah, agreed. Yes, especially around electrification. So again, that's just kind of going to continue to, there's a whole segment on electrification, BEV, PHEV, and standard hybrids. And that's going to be interesting to watch, for the next 2 quarters.
It is. Hey, for everybody out there watching and listening, one of the biggest compliments you can give myself or John would be to share the show. All right. If there's anybody out there that you think needs to see some part of this conversation, your manager or a colleague or friend that needs to see some part of today's conversation or get a copy of the report, send them the QR code or send them the link. It will be down in the notes below for sure. All right. But definitely sharing the show is one of the best compliments you can give myself or John. Again, from myself, thank you so much for taking the time. John, really appreciate you coming and hanging with me. This was a lot of fun, man. And we'll talk next quarter, right? Yes. Okay.
You got it. Good to see you again.
Thanks, John. Have a good one. Bye, everyone.
Thanks for tuning in to the Experian Auto Insights podcast. For full access to the reports and more insights, visit Experian.com/automotive. Be sure to follow the show and stay tuned for more insights into Experian's quarterly automotive trends report.